everybody. I'm Cam Kelly. I'm a commercial real estate associate with the Langer Commercial Group, and welcome to another edition of Tableside Talk with Evan Langer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evan Langer. I'm the president and founder of the Langer Commercial Group. We are a commercial brokerage team. We have offices in Columbia, Maryland, also in Annapolis, Maryland. We have team members in Virginia, in Baltimore. We serve the suburban Maryland, Washington, D.C., and the Northern Virginia area primarily.
Absolutely. And so, Evan, in your experience and what you've seen thus far, what makes a good commercial real estate broker? Why should someone, if they're considering a transaction, whether it be to buy, to sell, or to lease space, what would someone want to know as to why a good commercial real estate broker should be on my team?
Sure. There's actually a lot to unpack with that question. Unfortunately, there seems to be a somewhat widespread misconception out there that the primary function of a commercial real estate broker is to find someone a good space. And a lot of people feel like, well, I can do that. I can drive around. There's signs, for sale, for lease all over the place. And so I don't really need a commercial real estate broker. I think that's a mistake. First of all, we actually a good commercial real estate broker can find spaces a lot better than somebody in another industry can. For instance, we spend roughly $10,000 a year on databases, professional level databases, many of which you can't get unless you're in the industry, or you wouldn't ordinarily spend the money on to have those things. So they have more spaces than you'll ever find. I know the platforms that people look at online when they're doing things on their own, they don't have anywhere near as many spaces. But the other thing is that we're out here doing this all day, every day. So we know the buildings, we know the building owners, we know their representatives, we know who's likely to have space, or we know of situations where somebody may be wanting to downsize or may not be doing well and may want to give up some space. So even within what's on the platforms, we know things that are probably might be available that are not on them. So that's something that a tenant can't typically do for themselves. So we also know, when we know the buildings and we know the landlords, we also know why a particular building or a particular area might be good for a particular tenant and why another one might not be. So we can help them not spend a bunch of time looking at buildings that won't work for them. For instance, we already know that the parking here is not going to suit you, or the access to your workforce over at this other property isn't going to suit you. We know the landlords and their personalities and whether there's going to be a match or a mesh or not. So all those things, I believe, make us much better able to find spaces. And when we do find them, we know how to negotiate them. We know the concessions that are prevalent out there. We know what to watch out for. So I think it's a misconception just in that. So that's point one that I'll put over to the side there. The other thing is that that's just a fraction of the value that a good commercial real estate broker adds to any transaction. It always brings to mind possibly my best war story, as it were. I didn't even find the space, and I didn't even negotiate the base rent. So this was in Silver Spring, Maryland. I had known somebody as a child that I ran into. I'm a musician. I walked past his music shop, and of course, like a moth to a light, I went in there and I found out that this person I hadn't seen in years ran it, connected with him, and he had 10,000 square feet of space, and the landlord had come to him and said that the 10,000 square feet of space next door was coming available, and they offered him a rate that was, $3 a square foot less than other spaces were being offered at. So it was a good deal. And as a matter of fact, this was, much closer to the end of my legal career. I was still in brokerage. But he said, I know you're a really experienced leasing attorney. I would like for you to just look over the hot points, make sure I'm not getting myself in any trouble here as an attorney. And frankly, he even said, I don't even want to spend more than $1,000, which I can't go through a whole lease and only charge $1,000. That there's too much time invested. So I said, look, I'll keep it as low as I can. I'm very efficient. And I got the letter of intent from him, and I looked at it, and I said, you know what? I don't think you're getting a very good economic deal. And as a matter of fact, if it's possible at this stage of the game for you to have me be your commercial real estate broker, then I believe I can get you a much better economic deal, and I will do the legal work for you, and I won't even charge you for it. So it turned out that we were able to do that. The landlord was willing to let him have representation on the brokerage side. And so he had no free rent in the deal. He had a great face rate. He had no free rent whatsoever. He had no tenant improvement allowance. And there were some other provisions in there that were unfavorable. So I got him $30,000 in free rent, and I got him a $100,000 tenant improvement allowance. So right there, right off the bat, he's $130,000 better than he was before he met me, even though I didn't touch the base rate. I didn't even negotiate it. It was a good base rate. And again, I didn't find the building. So as we went along and I was negotiating this particular landlord, and it was a large national landlord, had him being responsible for the replacement of the roof when it came time for that to happen, and also for the replacement of the HVAC units and system. So I didn't like that. I tried really hard to put that burden on to the landlord, and it didn't work. They were obstinate. So I asked, okay, how old is the roof and what's the composite? And how old are the HVAC units? What's the make? What's the model? Serial numbers, all that sort of stuff, age, condition. They didn't like the question. And they hem-hawed and didn't get back to me, and I pushed, and they came back and they said, I think everything's about 6 years old. And I said, well, that's not good enough. I'm sorry, but I need to know, and I need paperwork from your HVAC and roof people showing me. And they eventually got that for me. They were soured from the questions, but at the end of the day, the roof and the HVAC were about 15 years old. And I called my roofing person, primary roofing person, my primary HVAC person, said for the roofer, here, the age is 15 years old, the composition of the roof is X, and I didn't prompt them. I said, what's the useful life? And they're like 12 to 15 years. So I was like, okay, the roof's at the end of its useful life. Same thing happened with the HVAC. Those units were near the end of their useful life. So I went back to the landlord, and armed with that information, I was able to turn the tables, and the landlord agreed. The language they used was that they would replace the roof and the HVAC systems for the first time that they needed replacement during the lease. Well, it was a 10-year lease, so there wasn't going to be a second or third time unless they really extended the thing for years after that. So about a year later, I ran into the tenant, and he said, I'm really, really glad that you negotiated that they'd be responsible for the HVAC because they just finished spending $80,000 on the units. So you add that to the $130,000 that I had already gotten him in free rent and in a tenant improvement allowance, and we're up to $210,000 in cash that I got him, improvement allowance that I got him, costs that got shifted from him to the landlord. And I don't know. I know the roof was going to need to be replaced at some point during the 10-year lease. I haven't talked to the gentleman in a couple of years or so, but that was probably going to be a good $50,000. So I think this situation best represents how a good, knowledgeable, experienced commercial real estate broker brings value to the tenant. Again, I had a guy who didn't even want a broker, didn't have a broker, had a good face rate, found the building found him, and yet I was able to negotiate I'll say easily $250,000 in benefit to him. So that's my war story. That's what I think best illustrates what a good broker can do, and an experienced broker. So that doesn't mean a broker. A lot of people don't have the experience, don't know what to ask for, don't know what to check on, don't know what to protect against, um, or they don't have the experience, and or they don't have the work ethic. Maybe they're not going to pump and work that hard for their clients. So, am I saying that I'm the only person out there that can do that? I'm not. But numerically, percentage-wise, there aren't a ton of them. So they're out there, we're out there, but that's a value. That's my value proposition. So there you have it.
How would you say someone should best find you or us or somebody just in general that is a good commercial real estate broker? What would be the questions that someone should ask?
Well, one, I would interview multiple people, and that's against my own self-interest. Of course, I'd rather somebody just call me, but talk to people, because people can have experience and people can have knowledge and things along that line, but their plate may be very, very full, and or you may be a big deal to some brokers, or the deal that you have is a big deal to some brokers, but it's very small to some other brokers. And so you're probably going to be down at the bottom of their work pile. So I would say research people, whatever kind of transaction you're doing. If it's an office transaction, a broker's not a broker. A broker who's sold 50 hotels is not probably going to do a very good job for you on your office lease, because they may have done 0 or 1 or 2 office leases, and they're very different. So make sure that it's somebody that's experienced in what you need them to be experienced in. Make sure that they have the requisite experience, that they can take you on, that your deal size is something that's meaningful to them, that they're going to be involved on it, that they're not just going to, take it. A lot of times people will sit there and take something on, and then they'll hand it to somebody who's new, and that's really who your representative is. But a lot of questions like that. A good broker should have reviews by people that they've represented. It's easy to talk about yourself and say how good you are. It's far harder to get other people to talk about how good you are if you weren't, and how much value you brought if you didn't. So I would say that, but tailor make it. It can't be just, oh, so and so's a commercial broker, they've been one for 5 years. It's like, oh, okay, well they've done 98% restaurants, and I'm looking to do an industrial lease. So that's not really a match. And if you do want to buy a hotel, you should look for somebody who brokers hotels. Most general commercial brokers, they haven't done much in the way of hotels. So those are the kinds of questions that I would ask, and ask them for references, like you would with most other professionals.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks, Evan. I think that's going to be valuable to a lot of people out there.
I hope so.
Was fun.
I hope so. And again, obviously we would like your business, but it doesn't have to be me. But if you're going out there, or us, but if you're going out there and you're looking for a good broker, I would say to employ a lot of the thought and a lot of the questions that we just discussed. And have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.